like the music.
Powered by Riverside.
Well, it's so good to have Hesha on the show today. We're looking forward to having this conversation with you about how we can navigate tough issues in our society. So thanks for being a guest on the show.
You're welcome. That's our deal, everybody. That's the magic beans. This
That's
is
right.
how you
Hold
do
it.
it.
That's
This
exactly
is how
right.
you do it.
I know that song. So I'm going to start out with an easy question for you. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
So that is such a good question. And when you kind of sent that to me in an email, I had to really think about that because I've been lucky. I've had a lot of good advice. But I would say two, because everyone listening knows we have a left brain and a right brain. So left brain is your logical, your rational, mathematical part. And your right brain is your creative, open, intuitive part. So I would have advice that hits both of those, where my sister, 25-ish kind of years ago, I was complaining about something and I wanted to say something. And she said, "What outcome do you hope to achieve with that?" What a question. Because we all get hot and bothered. Every one of us has an amygdala. Every one of us has buttons that get pushed. But if you can stop and say, what outcome do I hope to achieve with that? Whoa, that's a power. You just gave yourself power. So I've used that a lot. And one of the reasons I did with holding the calm is sometimes you can't get to that logical thing because you're just too hot. So you say, I'm holding the calm. I'm holding the calm. I'm holding the calm. That lets you calm down enough to then say, okay, what outcome do I hope to achieve? Now I got some power to choose what I want to do. So that was my left brain one. My right brain one was my wonderful husband was holding a wiggly 7-year-old grandson who just wouldn't simmer down. So we laid in bed with him and just held him. And he said to him, and the kid was wiggling all over the place. And he said, just relax and enjoy the feeling. And I climbed into bed with them. And I say that to myself all the time now. Just relax and enjoy the feeling. Because you think about how much of our lives just go by. When it's good, I'm worrying about what may come next, or what happened past, or will this last, or whatever is happening. And I'm not enjoying the present moment of when it is good. Because, life is a cycle. Crap happens, good happens. Crap happens, good happens. So during the good, filling your tanks and relaxing and enjoying the feeling, it's been marvelous.
Well, and that's how you stay present too, by being in the moment. If you just can stop your brain. My problem is my brain's constantly running. How do you just stop your brain and enjoy the moment? Or as somebody once told me, how do you ride the wave?
Indeed. And that's literally the title of the book, Holding the Calm, first it had a fancier, title. And my publisher literally said to me, I've been doing this 35 years. And he said, just so your audience will know, I do cases for Google and Verizon and IBM and Facebook. Big stuff. And someone will come in and say, I want $100 million. And then the defendant will say, here's 10,000, go pound sand. How do you get that settled? And I settle almost everything I do. So it's certainly not with going, you're right, you're wrong. That's not how it's done. So he said to me, why are you so good at what you do? And I thought for a minute and I said, well, I hold the calm. And he said, that's the title of the book. And so that's what's so important, is that our brains don't freaking stop. So you need a tool. And take a deep breath honestly doesn't really work, because when the amygdala is charged and firing, it's the fear and negativity center of the brain. And what it says is help, 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 help. And it feels powerless. So what you have to do is give it some power. By saying, take a deep breath, all you're really saying is, oh, dude, you are powerless, which just makes it worse. So you have to give it some power. So if you say, I'm holding the calm, I'm holding the calm, I'm holding the calm, I've got power. In a powerless situation, I've got some power. Now I can do that for you. Maybe I can hold the calm for you. That's how we get the amygdala to calm down And neuroscientists have shoved people in MRIs and put caps on them. I mean, they know all kinds of stuff. And what they figured out is that when the amygdala is firing, your brain goes into what's called a refractory state, and it lasts for 20 minutes in pretty much everybody, 18 to 22 minutes. Everybody. So the prefrontal cortex is behind the forehead. Why would I give you logic, data, information, reason, persuasion, when this part of your brain is shut off? It's off for 20 minutes. So what do? The first thing you do in a powerless situation is you give somebody some power. Where would you like to sit? What music would you like to listen to? How is the temperature here for you? What would you like to order for lunch? Which chair would you like to sit in? How would you like to begin? What's the most important issue to you? See, all of those questions are all basically sentence stems that I put in here for people, but they're all power questions. I'm going to give you power because it's going to calm your amygdala down so then your prefrontal cortex can actually function and we can actually have a conversation. Isn't that amazing stuff?
It is amazing. I love how you lay that out, because you're right. It does, giving people power who feel powerless does help calm a situation down, because usually you walk in and you just know it's going to turn out badly, and you're waiting for something in that conversation to verify or approve the fact that you know this is not going to work out well for you. So to sit there and say, well, I do have some say in this situation, some power in this situation, it helps to kind of, I do say, calm people down.
I love, there's a great analogy that I like, and this is just absolutely proven. This isn't even neuroscience. This is just kind of basic psychology and how people sell you junk. But let's say oranges. You want to buy oranges. They're 25 cents each. How many would you buy? I don't know. I like 2 oranges. Oranges, 4 for $1. 35% boost in sales. That's 25 cents an orange times 4. It's exactly the same number, but it gets a 35% boost in sales. Why? That makes no logical sense. And yet it's proven across every race, every ethnicity, every gender, every sexual orientation, every socioeconomic group. It works for the rich and for the poor. It's a human being thing. So how things are packaged, how they're designed, how they're presented absolutely impacts how we think of it, how we interact with it, how we perceive value. It's huge, huge. And very often what people say they're upset about is not what they're upset about. It's just the frontal piece. So when you learn how to hold the calm, and you learn, I mean, literally, what I did basically is I wrote 20 tools in 20 chapters. Each chapter has sentence stems and stories and tools, so that you can literally just pick one tool, pick 2, and play with them and practice them. And you can sometimes say to somebody, okay, not real effective. Or you can say, you know what? That reminds me of a story. And every story I have in the book is designed to be told in 30 seconds. And they all work because I use them all the time. So they're battle tested. And if you tell someone a story and they go, oh, you just gave them the power to interpret it themselves, as opposed to saying, I'm going to tell you what it means, dude, because clearly I'm smarter than you. Yeah, well, let me know how that works out for you.
You're right. Exactly. I love your approach. But I'm curious, what sets you apart from other people in your field?
Well, there's a lot of good people in my field, thank goodness, and I think mediators are healers of human conflict. So they're kind of close to God on that one. We are sort of the emergency room doctors of conflict and of human beings. So I like that. The thing I think that has let me find and develop my superpower and what makes me good at what I do is I'm a very good diagnoser. I don't just shove something at you because that's the only thing I got. It's like a doctor. If you come into a doctor and they go, well, here's some blue pills, they work for the guy before you, you go, let me run away from you. So each person is so unique and so different. And that's when we talk about, racism, sexism, anti-Semitism, homophobia. Yes, we have to talk about that stuff. And I find it ridiculous that we have to. Why would I look at your outsides Your outsides are so irrelevant. All Black men don't think the same. All white women don't think the same. All Hispanics don't think the same. Why would I look at your outsides to diagnose a damn thing about you? Makes no sense at all. So if I take time to look at you, are you an introvert or an extrovert? That's pretty easy for people to tell. And boy, you go left or right on that one. Are you the kind of person that says, I want to know by 5 o'clock? Or are you the kind of person that says, I need to think about that? Are you the kind of person that says, I make all the decisions? Or are you the kind of person that says, let me talk to my whoever, right? Once you take 5 minutes of listening to somebody, you know what makes them tick. Now I'm going to talk to you in your language. Well, how would I speak Chinese to someone from Spain? It didn't make any sense. So the more multilingual you are, which is how I view this, you can talk to different people, you have different approaches. That's really a big one and everybody can do this better. I mean, I'm an expert at it because, God gave me a laboratory of 30 years to be able to do this, but everybody can do this better. And that's why when I wrote this little paperback, $15 little Amazon book, I had to kind of fight with publishers because they wanted it fancier, more academic. I'm a big fancy lawyer, so it needed to come from big fancy stuff and more expensive. And I said, no, I want it simple. I want it easy. I want it accessible. I want it cheap. I want people to be able to buy this. And you know what I did in the back of the book is I put a discussion guide that people wanted me to charge for and make it a separate book. I said, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to give it away for free in the book so that within churches or organizations or community centers or HOA centers, 10 people can buy the book, sit on once a week a book club, and go through the discussion guide, which follows and tracks the book, and make it a free training. So now all of a sudden, Keith, you can say to me, well, I thought that story was stupid. And someone else will go, oh my God, it changed my life. It made me see things differently. And you'll say, really? How so? Now you got a training, a real training, not someone just talking at you, but the internal work that requires for skill development and awareness deepening. And I put it in there for free because my goal is I want people to do this in groups and talk with each other and learn how to do it. So if you're in an organization and something's happening, you have the same lexicon. How about if we hold the calm, right? And then you do a sentence stem, or you do some other benefit, or you use we plural words, and things just kind of calm down. And people go, wow, that was great. Wouldn't that be marvelous? God.
It would definitely be more. Yeah.
And we need it. What you and I were talking about pre-recording, God knows we need it in our society.
We do. You've talked about you've been doing this for 30 years. So tell us your personal journey to how you got from where you started to where you are now.
Well, I have been a lawyer for almost 40 years. So Clairol helps me kind of, cover up my gray, right? But when I was a young woman lawyer, I did big, bad commercial kind of businessy stuff. And I had a kid. And back then you couldn't do stuff and have a kid. Like it just wasn't. Even now it's very hard, but back then it was very impossible. And 1 week, within the span of 2 weeks, I won a case I should have lost because I just outlawyered the other side. And I lost a case that I should have won because I got good old boyed on the other side. And that caused a crisis of confidence in me. And I said, this cannot be. And I found out about mediation. I said, wait a minute. You talk to people for a living? You solve problems for a living? Sign me up. And then that's how I just started doing this. And I didn't know what I was doing in the beginning. I made every mistake you could make. And like I said, God gave me this fabulous laboratory where I got a chance to practice. And my personality is such that I don't just do one thing and say, okay, I'm done. Well, what happens if I tweak it a little this way? What happens if I turn it a little that way? And I just kept experimenting. And I developed this really amazing skill set that I want to bring to normal people. Like we should teach this in schools. We should think about every teacher. If I have any teachers listening to us, what is your complaint? It's not your kids. It's the parents, right? Or the administration. So wouldn't it be great if you had a couple of sentence stems? Can I give your audience a good one right now that is sort of the magic beans that works in every situation?
That would be great. Sure.
This one is great. Think about Thanksgiving dinner when you have to deal with, your idiot brother-in-law, or think about this horrible administrator at school, or a neighbor, or a kid's coach, or coworkers, or someone at church. Or someone at your synagogue or your mosque. Just imagine how difficult all that stuff is. And the person's just rah, 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 at you. You look at him and you say, you know what I admire about you? Guess what? They stop talking. They stop talking because they're like, what? What do you have to say? And you could use any verb that you authentically can say. Do you know what I like about you? You know what I love about you? You know what I respect about you? You know what I admire about you? You know what I like about you? You know what I'm intrigued about you? I don't care the verb. Use whatever one is authentic to you. They stop talking. And all they want to hear is what you have to say. So you have gained power and you stopped whatever onslaught nonsense is happening. And then say whatever you can authentically say. Your passion, your commitment, your energy, your enthusiasm, your desire to help, your whatever. It takes the amygdala down. It holds the calm. It gives you the power in the interaction. Then it allows them to maybe want to hear what else you have to say. And you can say, do you think I might have a different opinion? Would you be interested in hearing my opinion? Neuroscientists have proven that we have 187 cognitive biases. One of them is the bias of reciprocity. I listen to you, you're 80% more likely to listen to me. How do we do that? But how do you stop the onslaught? That one little technique. Try it at a family dinner. The next time the blowhard just opens up and starts, and everyone's like, oh, what do we do? And how do we get away from this? You take control of the table and say that, Uncle, whatever. You know what I really admire about you? How passionate you are about politics. How you seem to really care. I really admire about that. And everyone here has different opinions. And maybe we shouldn't get into it at Thanksgiving dinner, but I really admire that you care. He's going to sit down in his seat. And I got a million of them in this little thing.
What I like about this conversation is I love the fact that you give us concrete things to do to really help us advance the conversation, because I don't see a lot of that in culture and society. I hear a lot of yelling at each other, a lot of toxic conversations, not a lot of actual conversations.
Yeah, I know. There's one more, just because I'm a big believer in concrete. Theory is lovely. Understanding is lovely. What do I do today with the problem I have today? That's what I want to know, right? What do I do today? So one of the ones that just I want to share with your audience is plural pronouns. You know how easy it is? Keith, you are wrong. You don't know what you're doing. You don't know what you're saying. Let me explain it to you. Let me educate you, because clearly I'm smarter than you. And then your defensiveness is immediately going to go, I don't want to hear a doggone thing you have to say. And that's just so natural. But what if I use plural pronouns? Keith, how are we going to handle this situation? I know we have different perspectives on this, but we're both really good people. How are we going to take care of this? How are we going to handle that? Doesn't that change everything? Our bodies, our brains are wired for commonality. And part of what happens with all the isms, racism, sexism, anti-Semitism, homophobia-ism, alt class-ism, is it focuses on how we're different. Okay, you can do that. Plenty of opportunities to do that. But if we focus on how we're the same, the glass is either half full or half empty. I'd rather look at the half full and see, where are we the same? Where do we have commonalities? And then our outside externals are just not relevant. And actually, can I give your audience one more quick, immediate tool that they can use?
Definitely.
Let's say you're talking to somebody and let's do the advanced class here. I don't like you. You're a liar, you're a thief, you're dishonest, you're violent, you're whatever. I don't like you. I don't respect you. Okay, I have strong feelings against you. How am I supposed to hold the calm and use sentence stems and try to get through to you? Because man, you are evil. You are just a terrible, horrible person. And we all know that in our lives, we all feel that way about somebody. And we can find the proof to prove it and justify it. Well, what's that get you? What does that help? So instead, I got to deal with you. So I look at you and I hold the calm and I say to myself one question. Would you pull my kid out of a burning car? 95% of the time, the answer to that will be yes. So maybe there's something redemptive about you. Maybe you're not as terrible as I thought you were. Maybe you have reasons or justifications or bad parenting or hard life or whatever for why you act the way you act. But if you'll pull my kid out of a burning car, all right, maybe I can speak to that part of you. And what that does is it changes how you talk to the person. It changes how you perceive it. It changes your own confirmation bias, which is one of the biases that neuroscientists have showed, that whatever you say and do comes through that filter of that bias. It shifts that a little. And so what does that do? Gives me power. Now I got power. I'm not jerked around by my own perception of you. So now I have more power. This is just great stuff. And that's literally what I put in the book, is so much of that.
So that's something you say to yourself. It's not something you actually say out loud. You're telling yourself that.
Correct. Or let's say, Keith, you and I hate, Joe over there. All right, maybe I'll say that to you. I know you think Joe is horrible and evil and terrible. And honestly, I agree with you. The things he has done has been horrible. But do you think he would pull our kids out of a burning car? Now we have a conversation. Now we have a joint commonality and lexicon and holding the calm of how we're going to deal with that person. It basically is, what I'm really doing is a technique called paradigm shifting, but that's a little more sophisticated to have a conversation about. But this is just I'm all about shortcuts. Man, how can I get to where I want to go as fast and quickly and easily as I possibly can? And then if you want to learn more and want to do more, God knows there's a million MBA programs and master classes on all kinds of complex stuff. But let's do the magic beans of what works today, right now.
We've talked a lot about just some techniques. We live in a win-lose society. So how do we create small, winnable victories when you're dealing with conflict?
I love that you actually read my book. I get a lot of podcast hosts that skimmed it. You actually read my book because you picked out a whole bunch of gems. And what I find interesting is, like I said, 20 chapters. I thought 2 or 3 would be everyone's favorites. It's not. Everyone's got their own, which is really proof of my theory that we are all so unique and different, and everyone likes their own little thing. So creating small winnable victories is one of the chapters that is brilliant, because what does everybody do? Abortion, gun control, immigration. It's yes, no. You can't get anything done there. All problems get solved by eroding the outside and dissolving it to where you move toward commonality and toward a middle. So small winnable victories. What can we agree on? What can we look toward? How can we find something? So good environmentalists, right? They've learned, to the big wind turbines and those kinds of things, they have to be placed in red states that are very rural, who don't want this environmental stuff. They want to have their oil and gas because it's jobs and, it's part of what their infrastructure is. So the cities that would more likely vote for it, you can't put wind turbines in there. So how are you supposed to do this? Well, the really smart environmental groups have gotten together with blue and red, kind of made a nice purple about it, where we care about global warming and we want to get rid of fossil fuels and have better wind energy. The oil and gas people say we want to be able to have recreational areas and hunting and maintain our way of life And so we already have this land set up for either coal or oil and gas. We can put wind turbines on them too. And then we just diversify our revenue source and protect what it is we want to do. That doesn't happen when you're bad, you're bad. That happens when, how do we find commonality? And one of the things that I do as a mediator, and I try to do in my entire life, is I look for self-interest. I honestly, when I'm doing a deal or there's any kind of conflict, Keith, I honestly don't trust what you say, because either you're lying to achieve a result or you don't know what you want. You're just angry and you're pushing forward to what you want. I try to look and go, okay, what's your self-interest? Where's the money? Where's the love? Where's the power? Where's the fear? Where's the self-interest? And if I can identify self-interest, now I can align them. Once you align them, that's how you find deals. But if I stay in the place of I'm right, you're wrong, I'm good, you're bad, ain't nothing going to happen there. And that's why I love that. Would you pull my kid out of a burning car? Because it makes me turn someone who's bad into maybe not so bad. Now, maybe I can deal with you. Now, it doesn't mean you don't stand up for what you believe in and you don't have lines that aren't crossed. All that stuff is absolutely true too. And the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And building coalitions is how anything gets done. Right?
Right. I know I've been in church meetings, believe it or not, where things have not been going well. And
I have mediated many church conflicts, many of them.
and so stuff started hitting the fan. So how do you use situational aware play and to solve a situation like that?
Well, it's the same thing. If you're in any group, but let's use a church just as an example, right? Everybody is there because they have a commonality, right? They care about the organization, they care about the church, they care about some level of religiosity, some may care about Jesus, some may just want the community. Whatever it is, there's some commonality. I would speak to that first. That's the first thing that I would do. So I'm a nice Jewish girl, and I have mediated lots of church disputes, lots of them. And that's because like we talked about earlier, I'm a God person and I understand that. So I've had situations where they're very intense and I'll stop and say, you know what? Things are getting so hot here. Let's pray. Who wants to lead? And the person that's the hottest and the angriest, I'll say, why don't you take a breath and let us pray for you, because this is hurting your heart. We can see how much this is hurting your heart. And I've had people just start crying and bawling, and we pray. And we say, okay, we need some guidance here because we've lost our way. How can we do this? And then I've done times where I did this church that the board was just like at each other's throats. I had them go around and this was a small, I only had this one. I'm trying to remember now. I think the board of directors was only like 8 people, something like that. I had each person go around the circle and say something good about all 8 people. Took us about 45 minutes. And it changed the entire tone. And so what happens is that we are humans. The human condition is to see things binary. Yes, no, right, wrong. It's rarely that clear. So let me just give a nice analogy I like to use a lot. You're on a bus and there's a guy sitting there just kind of with 2 kids and he's just zoned out. And his 2 kids are running all over the place. They're grabbing the things. They walk by someone. They whacked someone's book that they were reading. And everyone else on the bus is looking at each other. With judgment. What a bad parent. How can he do this? I mean, there's a lot of that going on. And he's just sitting there with his head down, not paying attention to his children. And then he notices everyone kind of looking at him. And he looks up at everybody and he says, I'm sorry. Their mother died last week. And I just don't know what to do. Tone change on the bus for everybody? From judging and hating to how can I help you? That's what paradigm shifting is. That's what holding the calm is. So when we get wound up in something, you can't see. Neuroscientists call it ocular occlusion and auditory exclusion, which just means your ears closed and your eyes closed. And so when I'm doing a training, and what I tell people to do, if you're going to get the book and use the discussion guide, when you get to that section, you literally do this. And I make everybody do it in the room. You put your hands up and you put it around your face. I'm going to say, imagine going through life like this. You have no peripheral vision. You don't see very well. That's what ocular occlusion is. And that's what happens when we get hot. It just does. So let's cool it down. That's all. Let's just cool it down. Then we do small winnable victories. Because what happens is the other guy is wrong about everything. No, he's not. He's not wrong about everything. There's something you agree with there. Let's find that. Let's talk about that. Well, then, under the bias of reciprocity, he's going to want to do that for you. Now, I want to not be, namby-pamby kumbaya about this. There are people that are, sociopaths, and evil does exist in our world. What Putin is doing to Ukraine is just downright evil, right? So there is a lot of that. And yet, Putin needs a way out with dignity. I have a whole chapter on that. We call it giving someone a way out with dignity. How is he going to stop that war? And as long as he is a mad, evil war criminal, how's that going to happen? And if the goal is to stop the war versus punishing, you're going to have different tactics and strategies, and that's really what you asked me. The very first question you asked me, the best advice I got, what outcome do you hope to achieve? And that makes you think 3 steps ahead and design backwards. You get much better solutions if you do that. But you need people in the group to be able to hold the calm. Because if everyone's hot and bothered, well, who's the ringleader? Who's the room mother? Who's the pastor? Who's someone who's like in charge? So that's where, I always do this. Hold the calm. That's why I did this thing. So people, anybody, hold the calm.
Hold the calm, right. Awesome tips. What has been the biggest challenge you've faced lately?
Oh, that's a good one. I always try to walk my talk, but now that I've written the book and I'm out publicizing it and doing all this, I feel like there's more of a light on me. So I really better walk my talk. So my track record is pretty decent, but every once in a while I can get pissed, I can get angry, and I just go, oh, God, why didn't I see that coming? How could I have handled that better? What else could I have done? So I think it's really true for all of us who are trying to do something is you got to walk your own talk. Otherwise, there's no authenticity to it.
Exactly. So Hesha, what are you most excited about right now?
Well, I have this book publication stuff. Writing the book was a piece of cake. It just was easy for me. The work to get it out there in the world, oh my God, had I known, I don't know if I would have done it because the amount of work is extraordinary to do. But then I get to meet cool people like you. I get to talk to your audience. And I honestly feel like I'm doing some good. Like I have some milk and I'm, passing it around so that everyone can have a little bit because people don't know and they don't know what they don't know. And they think that, well, I got to do things like my mama did or my daddy did or my grandma did. And usually they didn't do it very well. And one of the things I hate when people say, well, that's just the way I was raised. I find that such a cop-out. It irritates me no end. Wait a minute. So if you were raised a good little Muslim, you'd be a Muslim, right? You were raised a good little Christian, you'd be a Christian. You mean you have no choice? You didn't decide who you are and what you stand for and what you believe and what's important to you? That's just a cop-out to me. And I really feel every adult, that's what 18 to 30 is supposed to be, is figuring yourself out. Who are you? What are your values? What's important to you? And then when you become an adult, look at it and say, have I made good choices? Have I made bad choices? Where can I make better choices? What kind of life do I want to have at 40? And then when you're 40, it's what kind of life do I want to have at 50? I'm going to be 65 this year. maybe I'll get it right by the time I'm 70. That's how I'm looking at it, because I self-evaluate all the time. And I honestly feel like once you've hit your 60s and you've kind of got your life in order, you have an obligation to give back. You have an obligation to teach and mentor and help and say, oh, don't do it that way. Don't step in that alligator pit. Oh, you'll bite your foot off. And that's the job that we should be doing. And then younger people should be willing to listen a little bit. And so I feel like if I'm out there trying to do this message, maybe I'm doing a little bit of good in my little tiny corner of the world and kind of doing what God's wanting me to do. Because that's how I live my life. As I say, Lord, I wake up every morning, please don't let me screw up today. And what do you want me to do? And sometimes I say, Lord, speak louder. I didn't hear you well. And God will say, you weren't listening, girlfriend.
There you go. That is a perfect segue into this next question. What is a legacy you want to leave behind in the world?
That's such a good one. And, when I was in my late 30s, I volunteered for hospice. I actually felt God call me to do that. And I didn't have anyone die in my life. I'd never experienced it before. I just had a feeling to do it. And I'll tell you, anyone who's listening, if you want to get rid of your fear of death, like get rid of it, do hospice work. It is the holiest work I think you can do. Helping midwife somebody out of this world. And you're going to meet all kinds of people in all kinds of states, and the rubber meets the road. And there are families that will say, oh no, grandma, you're fine. And grandma's like, I'm not fine. I want to be able to turn my face and walk clearly that way. People that are God people sometimes have tremendous fear. People that are not God people sometimes don't. No one fits stereotypes in the work that I've done. And one of the things they had me do in the training is they have you write your own epitaph. Where if anyone's listening and feels like doing that little exercise, I cried. And I haven't done that in a number of years. So with your question, I may do that again for myself, because that's write your own little epitaph. What would you want people to say about you when you die? And that should inform how you live, how you choose to live. And God gave me the ability to have 4 decades in the trenches of human conflict, which means in my past life, I must have been a warrior, causing conflict. That's one thing I can think of, and I'm doing karma payback this time. And I know stuff. And if I can help get it out and make people's lives a little more harmonious and less acrimonious, I'd feel like I've actually done something, that, and I want to join my grandchildren more and play, pizza for breakfast, ice cream for dinner. Sure.
That's awesome. Is there anything I haven't asked you that I should address before we close out this podcast?
I want to ask you what you want your legacy to be, because that's such a good question.
No one ever asked me that question. Much like you, I want my first legacy. I really want this to be my kids to say I was a good father, and that I left them with the tools to navigate through this really complex world. Beyond that I brought joy to people, that I challenged them to think beyond their normal sphere of thinking, that I pushed them forward and just left an impact on them.
I love that. I love that. I love that. See how the bias of reciprocity works? It's good stuff, isn't it?
It is good stuff.
Oh, this has been such a pleasure. Really, I have enjoyed this so much. This is just sort of as an aside for any of our listeners be interested in this, is that I sang in a Black church for 3 years, and I was the only white face. And these people were so magnificent. I don't think I have ever really prayed to God in the way I prayed to God in an African American church. It was magnificent, that so full and complete and a full surrender. It was absolutely magnificent. And I was in the church for 3 years, and then their own internal politics kind of destroyed the church, and
That's the
full of
sad
it.
part about it.
I just, but the theory that I have after doing this for so many years is that there's something, I studied quantum physics, as an amateur, just because I find it so fascinating that, how can something be there and not be there? How does all of that actually work? But in quantum physics, mathematically, they're absolutely proven. After every great expansion, there is a contraction. Think about birth. Think about joy. After happiness and joy, all of a sudden there's difficulty and challenge. It's the undulation of the universe. It's the heartbeat of the universe. And that's just how it seems to go. And so I would tell your listeners, there are some people listening right now going through a hard time. And I would say, you're in the undulation, you're in the compression part. And you keep working on your skills and working on your love and working on all the tools and the holding the calm stuff you want to do, it will expand. And then it will contract, and then it will expand. And the more that you can keep the expansion out and the glass half full, the shorter and smaller the contractions. And it's been very helpful to me, because you can look at the world and find a whole lot of bad stuff there. And I don't ignore it. I don't put my head in the sand, but I'd rather look as if everything was a miracle, and that if God knows what I ate for breakfast, and that the glass is half full, because that's the energy stream I choose to swim in. And it just is better. Doesn't change reality, but it's just, you still have to have boundaries, and you still have to stand up for what's right. You still got to be smart, you still got to make good decisions, all that. And I think it kind of helps a little bit with a wind, beneath your wings.
Amazing, amazing thoughts. I love that. Where can people find your book and connect with you on social media?
Well, easy. Amazon sells, I think, 70 or 8% of all books. And it's also at Walmart, Target, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, all those places. But if you do Amazon, if I could ask, please leave a nice review, because it helps the search algorithm. And I would be ever so grateful if you would do that for me. And I have a website, holdingthecalm.com, that if we can put that in the show notes, holdingthecalm, CALM.com. And I have all kinds of free stuff on there. Every podcast I'm on is on there, so people can listen. And every podcast I do is different, because it's based on the juju that is with the host. So it's very interesting. And then you can sign up. I have a mailing list that I don't sell at all. And, once a week I send out little pithy things that I'm thinking about, or little tips or little ideas to just kind of keep people engaged. There's a Facebook page. I can't do the Twitter, Instagram thing. I'm sorry, I just can't. But at least there's a Facebook page, and there's the Holding the Calm page, and there's LinkedIn. So you can connect with me on all of those things. And I'm always posting cool new stuff that basically just keeps me inspired. So I share it, because life has gravity and can kind of press you down. So the more I can inspire myself and kind of inspire other people, it just kind of keeps you up into the, half full zone when life is wanting to smush you down.
Hesha, thank you so much for this inspiring conversation, and blessings on what you do, because you've given us some practical tips and tools to help deflate or bring calm, hold the calm in our relationships. So I really appreciate the things you've shared with the audience. We definitely need these discussions, especially in these times. And hopefully this becomes a viral movement of people holding the calm and having healing conversations as they go about their day-to-day interactions with people.
From your mouth to God's ears.
Yeah, that's right. There we go.